So today I want to take a look at a video from Blaire White. Blaire White is not one of my favorite people on this planet. Her views on transness outside of herself tends to be one of ridicule and shaming them, and her views on non-binary people seems to be that they don't exist, both of which are views that I find kind of abhorrent and terrible. But this particular video that I wanted to look at of hers is, and I quote, reacting to transgender kid comics, make it stop. And I figured taking a look at some of these comics might be interesting, and engaging her viewpoints, as terrible as I expect them to be, should hope to debunk some of the stuff that she's about to say. I don't have a lot of faith in her in this particular clip to get anything right. With that said, let's take a look at the video.
So let's just dive in head first. What do you mean I have boy parts? Are you talking about my penis? Because it's mine and I'm a girl, so it's a girl's penis. Oh God, wow. You guys know, I've been very honest.
Why is that funny? Like, being real, why is that funny at all? This is somebody's lived experience. Like, I know for a fact that this particular comic is done by Sophie Labelle, and I believe a lot of her comics were designed to talk about her own experience with transness and to create a conversation around it for other trans people. And given that, some trans women do identify quite fine with having a certain type of genitalia over the other and don't necessarily proceed to have or desire any sort of surgical procedures or alterations to their body. This is a perfectly normal thing, and especially as a child where you wouldn't want to perform any sort of procedures on anyway, for them to recognize their penis in this particular case as a natural part of their girlhood is awesome. You know? I don't know why she finds that funny.
I, as a trans woman myself, I'm still pre-op, so y'all know what I still have down there, but I would never utter a phrase like this. I'm very
Why not?
self-aware that what I have, regardless of anything else on my body, that is male anatomy, and that's just on period. And honestly, that
See, that's a problem right there, is the identification of it being male anatomy has nothing to do with the gender of the person. Sex and gender are distinct. Sex is a lot more complicated than just male and female anyway. It's a bimodal distribution of a lot of different factors. And focusing in on the gender part, if a girl or a woman has a penis and they are comfortable with it and they want it to be called a penis, then it is a girl or woman's penis, and that's the end of it. Blaire White does not get to be the arbiter on transness or the trans experience, nor does she get to reduce that particular aspect of people's lived experiences down to a joke, as she just did. That's not funny. That's not cool.
whole language, like girl thing, strikes me as very fetishy, and I've only ever even heard that phrase used by like men who are fetishizing me. So the fact that it's appearing in a comic book for kids is interesting. It's not a
Well, the fact that it's in a comic book for kids, I'll address that part of it first. I mean, it's important to be able to give kids language. And if they're looking at this either on their own or with a parent, nearby to help them explain and make sense of some of the world around them and their own experiences, I think it can be very helpful. As for the fetishization, I've definitely heard it outside of that context. I know a lot of trans women will claim that particular aspect of themselves. So who is she fooling here? Like, I don't understand.
moment for me, that's more like an issue for me. So this one's called The Customer is Always Cis. Hey Scott, here's your coffee, just the way you like it. Thanks Jess, you're the best. Whoa, I had no idea you're transgender. Wow, you're just so beautiful, I never would have guessed. But now that I know, I can see how you used to be a dude. That one's kind of funny. So honestly, I get the
Why is that one funny either? She's just gonna laugh at all these. No, she's in this comic. Like, the person is gawking at the woman because he's discovered that she's trans, And her being trans shouldn't be an issue. I don't understand. Like, in terms of the comic, it's displaying a message of what actually happens a lot of the time, where they'll start to try to look deep into your quote unquote hidden past and try to look and find the little details to correlate themselves. But at the best, it's gawking. It's not really appropriate or a good look.
Message in this one because I also find it a little annoying. It's usually like drunk girls in clubs or guys who know but still want to hit on you and give you the whole, oh, I never would have guessed you, or like, oh, I never would have known, getting all up in your mug and shit. But the character of this comic is literally wearing a bracelet that says transgender, which I've never really understood. People do that in real life. Like, this is a real thing. Like, people walk around with like trans flags and like transgender and like trans tattoos in their chest and stuff. And it's like, ooh, why would you do that? I can't relate to that. And I'm not judging because I have a vegan tattoo, and safe to say, homegirl is not vegan anymore. But, you know, if you're gonna wear transgender on your forehead, basically, you probably shouldn't be shocked when people bring it up to you.
Okay, well, the issue isn't that it's being brought up. The issue is that she's being made a spectacle of in that moment. He's gawking at her and trying to, like, find something. I guess as an example, like, can you imagine if somebody usually wears contact lenses and then all of a sudden one day they show up with a pair of glasses? Are you gonna sit there and say, "Oh, well, oh my goodness, I never knew that you wore glasses. Now I can see that you had contacts this whole time," and just kind of make that a whole spectacle of it? No, you just say, "Oh, that's cool, you have glasses," and you move on. It should be the same kind of thing here. And I think if it was, "Oh, you're trans, that's cool. I just noticed your bracelet," and then we moved on, it wouldn't be an issue. The issue in that comic is the spectacle that the person is making of a trans woman. So, yeah.
You're a guy?
I was.
You're a guy?
Past tense.
Was that clip really necessary?
It's the story of a healthy baby that made the doctors really anxious because of their micro penis. Ew. You see, it's because that baby challenged the common belief of doctors in society about what makes a girl and a boy. So doctors measured the baby's micropenis to know if it could potentially be penetrating. If yes, they'd make a boy of them. What the is this? This one is just really uncomfortable, and if I told you I even understood what they were trying to educate people on this.
Okay, no. There's no brainwashing going on here. The real thing is when a child is born who is intersex or sex indeterminate based on either having an enlarged clitoris or a micropenis, what ends up happening for this particular child is the doctors measure the size of the enlarged clitoris or micropenis. And based on a determination, I think it's something like 2.5 centimeters or something like that of the size, which is determined to predict vaginal penetration. And it's specifically centered on the hetero, normative understanding of vaginal penetration, unfortunately, of that penis when it develops. If it's greater than that particular length, we deem that child a boy, and if it's less than that, we deem that child a girl. And because of that, the doctors are using an arbitrary measurement on a ruler to determine the sex and therefore the gender of a child, when that child should be allowed to, one, choose the gender themselves, and two, even their sex should be open to a lot more conversation that the child should have an input on than just having that decision made by an arbitrary measurement of a ruler. It's a lot more complicated than that, and the fact that she, one, doesn't want to take the time to even Google it or research it, or even take any steps towards understanding this and just talk about it like it's disgusting. And I mean, it is disgusting. The topic being discussed is disgusting. Doctors should not be making this determination. But the comic itself is not a issue. And I think that if a child experiences something like this is an important part of their conversation if they are in this particular form of intersex or happen to be born with any other number of instances that could cause an enlarged clitoris or micropenis.
This one, I'd be lying. Can someone explain this one in the comments to me, because it's kind of just making me feel itchy. A gay couple raising a kid, aren't you afraid it'll confuse him? Well, my parents were cis and straight, but that never confused me as to how gay I was. Same. Don't you know cis and straight couples have had gay children for ages? You're already confusing me. Imagine how it'll be for the kid. And then the kid is gay and not confused. So I understand the message of this one. Like they're trying to say like, just because the parents are gay doesn't mean the kid are going to be gay, you know? And obviously I support gay couples adopting. That's a no-brainer. But the artist is like leaning into the stereotype that gay couples make their kids gay. Like they drew the kid as gay. Like they made the baby gay.
I would have interpreted that very differently. I would have interpreted that the baby's surrounded by gayness, you know, with the rainbow hat and the gay and the rainbow on the blanket. They're surrounded by it and are not confused at all. And it's not an issue. Whereas the woman was clearly confused. I don't think they were specifically making the baby gay. I think she's taking that completely out of context. I mean, that's not how I interpreted that at all.
It's a gay bee. Having gay parents does not make you gay, okay? Watching Blaire White videos makes you gay. She's too young to decide to be a girl, said no one ever to the cisgender girl. That's because they don't decide. That's like the point.
Okay, well, I would argue that they technically do decide. When a cis girl is told she's a girl, that decision is made by proxy. There is somebody who made that decision and you accept it because it works for you and you go along with it. So it's a decision by proxy that someone made for you and you just are content with that decision, so you never call it into question. But it is actually that kind of decision to accept what has been applied to you. Because it's comfortable. And for a trans girl, you know, we constantly question, well, how are they sure? How are they sure? Where the trans girl's just kind of trying to speak to the adults in the room and say, hey, what you assigned me, what you offered me in life, that's not what I want. That's not good enough. That doesn't fit me. Like something's not right here. So instead of accepting what the child is saying and try to work with that, there's a lot of desire to question that child. That's what I think the comic is speaking to. I mean, I guess you could make the argument that the cis girl doesn't have to choose or decide, but I feel like being content with a decision that was made for you is in fact a decision that you're making.
Okay, anyways, we'll never agree on that one.
No, we
Respect
won't.
intersex babies. Don't mutilate them. Okay, so I said I was gonna give props where props are due, and I actually like this one because I've watched a bunch of documentaries on intersex people. It's really interesting, and if you don't know what intersex means, it's basically an umbrella term for a bunch of different conditions that babies can be born with that make their biological sex less identifiable. So you have some babies that are born with like, you know, internal female organs like ovaries, and then external male organs like testes, and a bunch of different variations of that. So a lot of these intersex babies, when they're born, are actually given corrective surgeries and basically given sex changes when they're just a few hours old, because the parents and the surgeon, they all decide like that this is going to be a boy, this is going to be a girl. And unfortunately, it really messes up a lot of these adults when they get into adulthood, because, you know, they had their gender basically decided for them. Like really decided for them, not just how activists claim, you know, and it like doesn't matter.
And then she ruined it. That was all true. That was completely on point for Blaire White. Which makes me question how she didn't understand the other comic about the micropenis and all that, because that's the same kind of procedure I was talking about. When they figure out the certain level of penile length, they can often, at least historically, perform surgeries to enhance one way or the other and provide hormones for the child one way or the other to further the gender that they were assigned. And I don't know what she's getting at with activists. Like, there's this distinction she seems to be making where you have like transgender activists that are somehow not just trans but are trying to push an agenda when their lived experience is what's usually called into account. I don't know what she's going for in that particular thing. It doesn't make much sense to me. But yeah, no, you should be allowed to choose your gender. That should be something available. We should be having more conversations about that. And especially if you're intersex or have any sort of intersex condition, like I'd really be curious how Blaire White would create an intersectionality between the intersex condition and gender and transgenderness and what people are assigned. Should the child be choosing? And if so, how does that relate to transgenderness? I'd be genuinely curious to find out what Blaire White believes on that. Though, honestly, I'm a little afraid of what she believes on that.
Match how they grow up. So it's really interesting. And I actually agree with this one. So that's a good one. Babies can't consent to these surgeries.
Agreed and true.
So this one is called They Just Don't Get It. Hey mom, I wanted you to meet my friend Ellery. Hi, Jessica's mom. Hello. So which pronouns do they go by, he or she? As if that's like a normal question to ask someone when they greet you, but whatever.
It is a perfectly normal question. Also, the comic's probably a condensed down version of a conversation. Maybe it's not the first thing you say to somebody, but it's a perfectly normal thing to say to people, especially if you know that, your child is interacting with people in a certain, part of the the transgender community, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it's a perfectly normal question. But honestly, it should be a question that is asked more openly and from my perspective, at least.
Neither actually. They go by they. They? That doesn't make any sense. They means more than one person. You literally just use they as a singular pronoun. And since when do you care about grammar? Okay, so are they really a boy or a girl? Sorry, my mom is a clueless cis sexist, but she's trying. Sort of. No worries, I'm pretty used to it. I'm sorry, I just don't get you gender kids. What does cis sexist mean?
Put it together, Blaire White. If you have any knowledge of the dichotomy between trans and cisness, and you have any sort of understanding of that experience, then I think that if you saw the word cis sexist, then you could probably extrapolate that it's kind of a trans equivalent of sexism, racism, etc. Like, it's not that difficult to put that together. I think she's being disingenuous here. Also, Google exists. Just look it up. She's just feigning here that form of ignorance. That's my perspective on it. And as for this comic, they is actually an issue that a lot of people don't seem to understand. For one, the grammar is in place for that, at which the comic demonstrates, which I think is really well done. When you don't know somebody's gender, you use they if you don't have any of their pronouns in place. So what pronoun do they go by? They go by they. I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing. And it's an acknowledgement of non-binary peoples. So awesome. Like, I don't see what the issue is with the comic.
I cannot even keep up with all these words. Honestly, I just don't understand how these are made for kids. Like, this literally just comes across as like activist dribble. Like, I don't understand how the demographic.
What does activist dribble mean? I mean, this is literally something that parents could go over with their kids or could explore to understand the experience of their children if they were taking the time to understand what their children were going through. This is really helpful. And even if it is just being shared amongst adults or amongst teenagers even who need to have language to talk about their experience, that's a good thing. Like, I don't know, you're saying it's for kids, but what age kids? And even if it is being used to teach younger children about their potential situation or about other people's lived experiences, I think that's awesome.
Of these things are for kids. It feels like they were just made by activists for other activists to read, and they just call it for kids. I mean, honestly, when I was a kid, I was watching Power Rangers and Pokemon and staying up past my bedtime to watch The Simple Life with Nicole Richie and Paris Hilton. Like, that was my life.
That's hot, that's hot, that's hot.
Somehow that explains a lot to me.
That's hot, that's hot.
I feel like if I was given these to read as a kid, I would be even more messed up than I am right now. This one's called Assigned Male, and it's like a doctor and a mom and a trans child in this one. You're all set. Your mom will tell me if there's anything wrong with your hormone blocker prescription. You'll get your first shot in 2 days. Can you change the sex marker on my ID now? Asked the little girl. They even put it on the library card. I can't borrow books because of it. Oh, sadly, you can't change it unless you have your actual sex changed. And then the little girl is yelling at her mom, but mom, you told me sex was hormonal. The little girl says, I hate how the definition of sex is as arbitrary as gender stereotypes. This adult game is boring. Yeah, this is literally just activist dribble. It's so telling how in this comic, the little girl complains about how it's hard, like, making adult decisions, but the message of it is to convey that these are decisions that are okay for children to make. Seems a bit.
No, the issue in the comic is that the child has an innate understanding of who they are. And the adults around them, the adult game that's being played, is that the legal system and laws are preventing the child access to things that they deserve, like having their ID on their library card to be valued and accepted by society. That they should be allowed to have the marker that matches them because it makes it difficult for the child to take out books at a library. That's the point of the comic and the experience that's being spoken of. The child actually has the better understanding than the adults because the adults are restricted by the laws around them. And so that type of situation does happen, especially if you have a school ID that has the wrong gender on it and your presentation doesn't match with what people expect the presentation to match up with. That can make it very difficult to get books from like your school library and such. That kind of stuff happens. So no, it's not just activist dribble. This is the lived experience of human beings. Like all of these comics have been lived experiences of human beings. And she just kind of makes it a joke, and that's not cool.
Contradictory to me. And biological sex, unfortunately, is very far from arbitrary in 99.9% of cases, but
sex is a bimodal distribution. Different characteristics are determined vastly different. If you look at any of the modern science on any of this, you actually find that sex presents on two modal curves and ends up having what appears to be almost a spectrum. It's not quite a spectrum, but it reaches out into wide varieties of different characteristics. And the science behind it's quite fascinating. So, no, she doesn't know what she's talking about.
okay. All right, I can feel an aneurysm occurring right here, like literally right here. That is my cue to tap out.
Somebody should get her help for that.
From this video. Hope you guys enjoyed this little stroll through hell, wholesome content with me. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel.
Okay, I think she's just going to promote from here out. So, here's the thing. All of these comics were perfectly fine. They did represent a portion of what a lot of people go through. Personally, I think that if the comics are not in the language that kids could understand, I think it's an important tool for parents of children to help their children understand some of the things they're going through, and maybe something that families should be talking about, especially if your child is trans or non-binary and you want to have that kind of conversation with them. It's a good tool. I think it also speaks volumes to a lot of teenagers and what they're probably going through, and might help a lot of teenagers explain what they experience as kids, if you're assuming, of course, that kids can't understand them themselves, which I think she's not giving kids enough credit for, to be honest. So I think there's a lot of valuable information here. I think it's important. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and the bell for notifications. You can follow me on Twitter. Check out my brand new Discord in the description below. Feel free to come check it out and join the conversation. And with that said, my name is Anarchist Tara, and I hope you enjoyed watching.